I wanted to talk to you about exactly that, debunking the lies, dispelling the myths. Um, it was about this report that was in the corporate press about crime guns. You
Yes.
immediately saw it and just blew it all apart.
Yes.
And the headline didn't match the data, and I think you guys did an excellent job of just telling the truth, really just showing what the data actually shows. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. So this was a story written by Jim Bronskill from the Canadian Press, and of course, he's an activist journalist. He's always happy to do the work for Polly Soussevien and the other anti-gun lobbies. But the story itself, I read it. I was having my coffee, and I almost spit it out. I was so shocked, and it said something like most RCMP traced crime guns are domestically sourced. And that goes against what we've known, speaking to law
Mhm.
enforcement and all the data. So I was like, "What the heck? What is this?" So it didn't take me very long, literally about 21 seconds of, research to figure out what's gone on here. So RCMP, tracing is very minimal. First of all, only about 8% of crime guns are even recovered from the scene of a crime. So you're starting off with a very small batch of them. And of those, only 20% are sent for tracing. And this, of course, excludes Ontario and Quebec, the most populous provinces. So that data is not even included. So this is just a very, very small data point. And then, of course, of that small percentage, most of those are domestically sourced. But that also includes things like things that are not guns, like toy guns or replicas. So it's a very manipulative way of displaying the data. And of course, Polly jumped on this. They want Canadians to think that your average hunter, sport shooter, or farmer is a threat to public safety. But yeah, we debunked that pretty quickly. There's a web story up on ccfr.ca, and the government's own information was my sources for it. So yeah, easily debunked. But it's just wild how these girls, have no scruples about twisting information. And it's the Canadian Press actually went to the RCMP for comment, and they declined to comment because they knew exactly what Polly had done here. My phone rang off the hook from officers after I put out the video and the web story debunking what they were saying. So, yeah.
Oh, well, and I'm glad you did. Like every single order paper response that comes in when the conservatives ask about sources of guns that are involved in criminality, it's always like a fractional rounding error that belong to
Yes.
licensed firearms owners. Some of them are stolen from licensed firearms owners, but you would never blame the victim of a crime
Right. Yeah.
for the subsequent crime committed with their stolen property. That's like if some meth head steals my vehicle and then runs somebody over with it. What has that got to do with me? I'm the first victim that led to the second victim,
Exactly. Yeah.
but they never apply that logic with firearms owners who are the victim of theft or other crimes.
Well, they're taking the amount of RCMP traced guns, crime guns,
Mhm.
that is a very small data point from a very small area, and then applying that, wanting you to think that is representative of all crime guns, and it's
Right.
completely ridiculous. So, yeah, I know that law enforcement across the country has been sort of outraged at their ridiculous insinuations, and yeah, my phone, my email, everything's just been blowing up ever since. So,
In Canada, firearms owners like me understand the importance of safe, effective self defense options. That's why we're proud to have Byrna as a sponsor. Byrna's less lethal launchers are designed to help protect you and your family without taking a life. Byrna offers peace of mind, accessibility, and a practical layer of personal security for Canadians who value safety. Learn more at byrna.ca/rebel. That's byrna.ca/rebel. One more thing I wanted to talk to you about is I think it came from an order paper question last week where they identified the most commonly surrendered model of firearms.
yes.
And you would think would be, the ARs or AR style. firearms, but that wasn't it at all, was it?
No, of course, the most commonly declared firearm in the assault style firearm compensation program was 22s, little plinkers, like literally guns that we gave our children to shoot at pop cans up at the hunt camp. So it's funny because this entire time since Trudeau started these gun bans, we hear talk of weapons of war designed for the battlefield, designed to kill the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time. And then we find out that the most impacted firearm, of course, is little 22 plinkers. So, it's just no wonder when Bill Blair had floated the idea of sending all these banned guns over to Ukraine for them to actually use as weapons of war, that even the Ukrainians were like, "Yeah, I don't think so. Not going to happen."
Yeah. I
So,
don't think the Russians are gonna be all that intimidated, by a pink stock gopher rifle. Like, I
yeah,
just it's
like
so
unless you're
crazy.
going to war with the squirrels, you are out of luck. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just
Now
yes.
and what happens in the interim? So, the amnesty is extended. I wish it
Yes.
were canceled because the gun grab is
Mm.
canceled, and, if you guys win at the Supreme Court, and here's hoping,
Yes.
that will be the case, but you're still putting pressure on police services to not participate in this because the compensation program, it's still happening.
Yeah.
Uh, so what do firearms owners do in the meantime?
Well, you remember, so that declaration period, if you wanted to take part in this buyback, they call it, or whatever, the gun grab, that's closed and gone. But they still have
Yeah,
all the people who declared. Now, a lot of those people were scared of that impending looming date of the amnesty expiring at the end of October. Well, that date is now blown out of the water, probably by at least a year. Worst case scenario, if we lost, if we win, well, we're all going to the range. So it's irrelevant. But for those who did declare and are now like, "Oh, geez, wait a minute." It is not too late to withdraw from that program unless you've had an appointment. So what they're doing is those people who did fill out a declaration, they're contacting them. Of course, they're trying to grab whatever they can grab in the meantime and asking these gun owners to come down to these RCMP mobile checkpoints. I've actually got some video that's been sent to me of somebody going to one, and they're trying to grab those guns and have them destroyed. But if you want to hold the line and wait it out just a little bit longer and see what happens in court, it's easy to withdraw. And we've got a web story on ccfr.ca. It's as simple as just telling them, even when they contact you, you can just say, you know what? I've changed my mind and I want to withdraw. That's it. Don't hand your stuff in. You will not face any consequences for it. So, yeah, in the meantime, they are still scaring some people into doing that. And I mean, everyone has to make their own decision what's right for them. But I am asking gun owners just to hold the line, hold out, and let's see how we do in court. And let's see what we can do with this.
now, one more thing, my brain is turning because I wanted to talk to you about this when I first saw it, about 10 days ago. The SQ, so that's the police in Quebec,
Yeah.
they yeah, they have taken the PAL and RPAL list, and now they are going
Yeah.
door to door and asking people's spouses slash conjugal partners, that's what they call it on the firearms license form, and asking them if they have been victims of domestic abuse at the hands of
Yes.
their firearms owning spouse. For me, this just shows how low the criminality is for firearms owners that the police are now coming to you and interviewing your spouse apropos of absolutely nothing, starting
Yes.
investigations out of nowhere. But what an extreme violation
Yeah.
of people's right to fair treatment under the law, that they would just assume that by virtue of owning owning firearms, that you're all of a sudden some domestically violent maniac.
Yeah, oh, well, it's crazy to me because first of all, I think we can all agree, and I'm sure I speak for all Canadians when I say that we don't want women or anybody for that matter to be threatened or abused or any of those things. And they literally just passed C-21 and increased the red flag and yellow flag laws. Those all already exist. They existed before C-21. They exist even more now. If you have a public safety concern about somebody who owns a firearm, there's a very clear way to deal with that, and trust me, when they get a call about that, they take it
Yeah.
extremely seriously. So this, to me, I feel like it's like a fishing expedition, and I recognize that sometimes maybe there are people out there who struggle to be able to be strong enough to reach out and get that help that they need. But when you open the door this way and you're just reaching out randomly to, well, the spouses of gun owners, it's sort of ripe for abuse. And, I hate when systems like this are abused, but there are. I've read stories every day that come in to the CCFR inbox where you've got, an angry ex or somebody who's been jilted.
Yep.
And this is a perfect way to get revenge on somebody if you're
Yep.
upset with them. But at the same time, it sucks away all the resources from law enforcement who should be responding to the real calls. So yeah, it's like a problem looking for a solution, or a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. And I think it's a total violation of just the privacy of Quebec gun owners. And yeah, what an absolute insult to our community.
Yeah, it's the bigotry of low expectations. And I'm reliably informed that the police in Quebec have other things to do with
Yeah,
their
right?
time. I've seen Montreal on the weekends. Okay. You guys have other things to do.
Oh, yeah.